Hello guys, David Vose here. Boy, oh boy, it's been snowing. The last 2 or 3 days, it just kind of sprinkles and snows, but it doesn't stick. Hope you're having a wonderful day where you are. It's a wonderful day here. So guys, if you look on your screen, you'll see some aerial views of what looks like weird designs, or like almost like giants, but weirdly long-armed giants and weird animals. And these are aerial photos. We're looking down, and it's down by, I think it's Southern California, Arizona, in the mountains there. It is said that these were built by giants, and it's a little bit like the Nazca lines down in Peru, which, Eric von Daniken used to prove that there are some aliens that landed here with their ships, because you can only see these pictures from the air. So if people in those days built these things, even if they could build them, not being able to see what they're building, they wouldn't be any reason for pictures to view from the sky unless you could get up in the sky and look. And so people have believed that this proves, like Eric von Daniken tried to prove, that the chariots of the gods, that they were viewed from the sky when these ancient astronauts would fly in with their galactic ships. I don't believe in little green men. I would think that what this proves is that there probably were very technological ages in the past, and maybe more frequently than we have believed. And we're going to talk about these giants and possibly their knowledge. That the knowledge that they had was perhaps more profound than we had hitherto understood. We're going to talk about giants today. We're going to talk about Coronado and the 7 cities of gold, and Mary Magdalene, and the Languedoc, and all the things that we're going to be getting into here in the next few days and weeks. We're gonna try to tie everything, all things we're learning, together and learn something. But we got a mystery here. There's something going on, and I'm going to start by talking about some current events with Trump and Jeff Bezos the clown. We got Billy the gatekeeper and the crazy go to the Mars astronaut that puts Neuralinks in your head, and they're all doing something that we need to understand what they're doing. So let me start by showing you some things that are going on with BlackRock right now. Saw this today. It says why BlackRock boss Larry Fink believes he will win over control of the Panama Canal. Larry Fink is playing the long game with little time, possible nudge from President Trump, and some on-the-ground lobbying of his contacts in mainland China. BlackRock's billionaire boss believes he will win approval from the mainland's apparatchiks to take control of the Panama Canal on the money has learned. Specifically, Fink is looking to close $23 billion deal with Hong Kong-based C.K. Hutchinson to buy 43 different ports worldwide, including the 2 ports that are strategically located on the Atlantic and Pacific sides of the Panama Canal. Until recently, most people didn't know much about C.K. Hutchinson, which is headed by the mercurial 96-year-old billionaire L.K. Shing, Hong Kong's richest tycoon. That was until the Donald began talking up the strategic importance of the Panama Canal, one of the busiest waterways for global trade because it easily connects both oceans through a 51-mile deep-water runway. Hutchinson holds long-term leases there and at dozens of others, including the Suez Canal. Well, isn't that Donald began to talk up the strategic import of the Panama Canal about the time he decided to, or right after he decided to have J.D. Vance Why do they always have initials on the front of their name? He was deciding to make him the vice president, and they went around with the story that it was because Donald Jr. wanted it. Well, he was working for the Fink, and the Fink is the one who put Donald Trump, or the BlackRock put Donald Trump in as president. Their backing. Without it, he would not have become president. So Donald either is part of the Larry Fink buyout of the world, which evidently they're getting organized to make a one world government. They're going to bring on the AI and all of the things that's going to go with it. But whoever these individuals that own BlackRock are, we know this the round table that they've hijacked now from old, but it's not their good round table. But they've got control of it. They're corrupt. They've fallen. They're in it for greed. They're trying to take over the world. They might think that it's for our good, that we all live in 15-minute cities, and they take over the world and control it and section off the world into parks so that nobody can go there or you can't walk there. We continue to be under martial law and cameras watching everybody and AI becoming the god of this world. They may think this is right. I mean, their deity and their seances, right, tell them this is what they want, and they'll give them all the women and sex and evil. And of course, they take pictures of all this stuff to have blackmail on these individuals so they can blackmail everybody into doing what they want. And then they want to tell the public it's aliens. But yes, Larry Fink is the chairman of the round table. He's got brothers, Finkelsteins, all over the world. And they are very much going to bring this to pass. If you think they're benevolent, you are nutso. And their man is Donald J. Trump. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. Its stock traded cheaply, and when Trump began to mouth off about the need to exert U.S. eminence at the Panama Canal, the U.S., after all, built it and controlled the zone until the 1970s. So why is BlackRock owning it? Why is some billionaire in China owning it right now? Why do the billionaires own these things? Why is it not owned by the people? Well, it's because we are capitalists. And the capitalists, the ones who have the capital, run and own and tell us what to do. They own and control the world, not the people. BlackRock saw a way to make some money and get into Trump's good graces. Well, that's all we need to hear about that. I think we understand what's going on there, guys. And then they've got an article on why Trump isn't keen on Amazon being involved in the U.S. TikTok deal. The White House really wants to get a deal to sell Chinese short video app TikTok to a U.S. company and remove all possibilities of mainland using it as a way to spy on Americans. I think that's all propaganda because the billionaires own it, not China or America. And the billionaires have all of your information. They've been getting it. You'd have to be ridiculously stupid to think that all this information that's being gathered is being gathered by a country. It's being gathered by the tech people, like the guy that's trying so hard to save all of our lives by putting a Neuralink in our head, which he says will probably kill us, but he's got to do it. And of course, this other man who's head of all the Amazon forest and the ancient civilizations, and he's trying to bring this to modern times and build a big AI in North Carolina that's going to fix everything because they love us so dadgum much. And we should trust them, of course. And the appropriately named Fink, who runs the great round table of all of the heads of state that only want to help you. And they got to control everything on this earth, including your brains, your mind, your spirit, and everything you do and say and think for your own good because they love you so dadgum much. And guys, please don't stop believing. Don't stop believing, because they love you. How dare you think that there could be some conspiracy where people with that kind of power could possibly want to do anybody any harm. All they want to do is control your soul. You get down and worship me, and hey, I'll give you everything you want. That's all, man. It's all for us. It's all just good, man. There ain't nothing bad about this. We get to sit around in our little white 9x6 prison houses with a little microwave. You just throw that stuff right in there. Bing! Some of those doors will just open remote. You can sit on the living room lazy boy sofa, push a little button. Bing! There goes the microwave door. And, you've got a little fridge, small mini fridge next to your lazy boy. You reach in there, grab your frozen entree, and bing! If you can smack that sucker right through the door, then you can push that button again. It'll close. And in 15 seconds, you'll have a gourmet dish. What could go wrong, friends? Why do you doubt these people who only want to help you? I think you're all fools, right? Believing in this Jesus. Like he's coming back soon. And what's he going to give you? More than what Bezos the clown is giving you? Or the monkey chip maker? The Neuralink provider? I don't think so. Do you know who you're speaking of there, sir? This is the man who runs the whole world, sitting in his castle up there. And he's got all his knights all around the round table and appoints these individuals over these various conglomerate organizations around the world. Except apparently one big tech firm that Team Trump isn't so keen on is online retail giant Amazon, and money has learned. I know what you're saying. Hasn't the Donald and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, the dude he used to call Jeff Bozo because he owns the Trump-hating Washington Post, patched things up? Bezos was at the inaugural with his glamorous fiancée, Lauren Sanchez, and came bearing a $1 million gift. The WAPO is turning more Trumpy following Bezos' management changes. So this may be them trying to make us believe that it's going to go to Bezos, but Trump didn't want it. Just to let us know. I mean, he couldn't come out and just hand it over to Amazon this way. He's going to oh, it's a big deal. He couldn't do anything about it. Or he really doesn't like Bezos. I believe they're all in it together. Bezos has got this big, huge, warehouse that's so large it would be like a city. Somewhere in, I think, North or South Carolina he's building, which is an AI-based thing, which is going to take over the world, some AI. Bezos is running the Amazon where you're going to buy and sell everything. We'll be only using eBay, Walmart online purchases, maybe groceries because they supposedly have to be fresh, but they're not going to be fresh. It's just like I was saying the other day is that you go to a restaurant. I mean, even McDonald's supposed to be a sit down, you eat a burger and some fries. Supposed to they've cooked it, right? It's a restaurant. There's people in there with little hats and little bibs and, making food and cooking it. You go to TJ Fridays or Denny's or anything like this, and you think it's a restaurant, and you order and you wait, and they bring food to your table. And they've just cooked it, right? No, it's all microwaved. It's all frozen, packaged, portioned, packaged, put in a freezer. The cooks aren't cooks. They just grab stuff from a freezer, open the plastic bag, and microwave it to a point. Sometimes they'll warm the rest of it up in a fryer or something and throw it in a paper plate or a bag, and voila, there's your food. It's just portioned chemicals and various plastics and maybe some kind of newly invented cardboard that tastes like meat or fibers that they grew in a lab and put all together with a little bit of poison on top. Don't you worry, it's going to taste good. They got that poison It tastes like, gold, you know. They pour that all over it, and they put it in a plastic container with a cellophane wrapper in a box. That is shipped to your restaurant where they have little guys with white coats and a white hat like the Pillsbury Doughman who does nothing, knows nothing, has never been trained in any cutlery or chefery position, but simply knows how to throw that bing into the microwave quite well and do it with speed, because you'll be upset if your great gourmet dish will come out any longer than 5 minutes. That's the time frame that we're working on, because we got to get back to our slave job. They make it in the warehouse. It's all prepared. They send it in boxes to a location where they pretend they're going to cook it for you. And what they're doing is just hiring people to throw it in the microwave and hand it to you. So everything's a big scam. We're being mainstreamed. You know, everything's going to be technology. Everything's going to be robotic. Nobody's going to know because they're continuing to keep it so that it looks like people are doing something. You walk into a Walmart and there's somebody standing there. They've got a job, right? What are they doing? Hello, how are you? Hello, it's just propaganda. You know, somebody standing at the, you know, we don't have cashiers, right? We can't afford a cashier. You do it yourself. But we can't afford people standing around watching you and chasing you out the parking lot wanting your receipt, right? But anyway, it's all a big bunch of propaganda. And guess what? Amazon, the billionaires, Trump is their man who's trying to be the guy to negotiate between all these billionaires. And they're going to make a one world technocracy. I guarantee it. So I'm telling you all this because this is what we're seeing here in modern times. We know that we're getting ready to experience some kind of huge shift in our world. And if Jesus don't come back, then it looks like we're all going to be little mice in a cage going around and around on a little wheel waiting for our little piece of cheese. And we're not going to be happy. We're going to be very sad, excruciatingly sad, where people may want to commit suicide just because they can't stand it. Yes, they will give you, you know, it's like right now, why do we all have these phones? Why did we have television for free for the last, 100 years or whatever it's been? Because they're giving you this information for free because it's propaganda. They're controlling your mind. They've perfected it now. They've got this thing you hold in your hand. Pretty soon it'll just project onto the wall. They're advertising that now. And wherever you are, you'll just hold up your little wristband, which will shoot a ray of light out, and around you in a hologram will be people talking to you, advertising you can have 3D porn. You will be so diggity dang dong pleasured, but it will actually destroy your nerves and your mind and your soul. But that's no problem because you're going to be pleasured and addicted, and you'll flip around after a while in the spasms, and they'll take you to the hospital and say, oh, you've got carpal tunnel. That's just the result of your need to be on your phone all day, right? You're using your thumb for typing and you're wearing your thumb out. That's you're a fool. So we better take you, we'll send the ambulance for free. We'll pick you up. We'll take you down to the lab. We'll cut you open and find out why that thumb's not working right. Well, looks like one of your tendons is swollen up and irritated and inflamed. We'll just cut it off. We don't need that thumb anymore because, you know, we'll hook up the little neuro link to your mind. You won't be able to walk anymore. Your legs will be atrophied. You won't want to go. You won't have a need to go anywhere because the neuro link will take you right to Mars. And you'll think you're in another world created by Elon, the Musk man. But actually, you'll be in a little drawer, right, with a Neuralink in your head, just as happy as all get out, right? Pleasurable. Yes, that's what drew you in there and made you addicted to this, so you didn't want to get out because you had a 3-day, leeway. You could have said no, right? But you signed it. You said, yeah, this is great, man. 3D porn and all the crazy adventures I ever wanted. But after 3 days, you start going to some sort of a psychosis. Your mind starts to hallucinate, and it's very, very. It's like being a being outside of your body, stuck in a room that's only whitewashed, and it looks like a forever whiteness around you. No one's there but you. You cry out, "Hey, help me! I'm in this rat cage, and all I've got is this little wheel, and they throw in a piece of cheese once in a while. I'm not happy. In fact, if anybody comes near me, I'm probably going to strangle them. I'm going to find a way to get out of here, right? And I'll bash my head against the wall, go crazy, and flip around, and then they'll have you in a museum, right? They're like, well, this is one of the preliminary prototypes, we've cured all that. We've made them zombies now. Nobody cares, right? So now we've got control of the world. But hey, by that time, you'll realize that you're a useless human and not necessary. And so you'll be happy that we did this, right? Because this is for the advancement of the human race. I mean, the advancement of the elite evil people in their quest for world domination. You can't stop them. We've got to sacrifice ourselves on the altar to this great eternal quest to make the world a good place, right? Because every time we try to make it a better place, we make it worse. And so this has gone on for so long that now we're going to have to destroy you because we messed up. Oops. But guess what? The goal is not to make you happy. It was just a big lie, and not to improve your life or to advance civilization. We told you that evolution thing just to get you hooked on the idea. But in the end, we're just trying to control and destroy you because Jesus is coming back, and he's going to probably destroy us. So if we can't live, then neither can you. But before he comes, we're going to have a party. And boy, we're going to see how many of you are foolish enough to join and sign your name at the bottom of the page. But I think this is part of the great mystery, the end times, right? And in order to know fully why Trump and Bezos and the link maker to Mars is doing what they're doing and evidently succeeding quite well at it, we need to go back into history and find out what led up to this. And that's where we today are going to go into some of our history here in America and find out why did all the maps have in ancient times Tartaria everywhere? Why did all the ancient maps have a place called Chalago and Maraca in a place called California, right? Why were they all maps where California was an island? And why is it that we find all the giants in California and the Midwest in America? I'm going to show you that the giants that you thought, well, in the Bible were supposed to be before the flood, there were giants in the earth in those days. Maybe they were on the earth in those days. Maybe they were just humanoid type beings. We don't know who or what they were. That's not the point of the story today. The point is what the Bible and all the legends call giants, we might rack it up to maybe, like we've done here, we've talked about how some of these giants are really the 6 fingers, 6 toes might be the 6 houses on the top and the 6 houses on the bottom, and they're astrological deities, demi-deities that they talked about, the 12 Olympians and so forth. But maybe there were, as I always say, the Bible is both literal and spiritual. So anywhere in the Bible where you find a story, it has to have some basis in truth. I suppose there were, in ancient days, beings that were like giants. I mean, unless you don't believe the story that David killed Goliath, or, there were giants in the earth in those days. I mean, it's got to be a literal story as well as a symbolic story. We're going to figure out how these two ideas in reading these histories, why they wrote histories with the esoteric meaning. And does that mean there wasn't any history? Well, of course there was. And maybe if there was history and there were giants, maybe these people were, just as Joseph Smith said, before the flood, Adam and civilization was here in America. Maybe this is the Atlantic civilization, or Atlantis, that fell and sunk in the ocean. And they got on boats, and Noah went over to Mount Ararat, which is Eretz, the earth, landed at the top of the earth, which ended up being Heliopolis. Well, yeah, I know. We've done videos on all of this. You might be lost when I say that, if this is the only video you've watched of mine. But anyway, we're not going to talk about all of that. So don't worry about what I just said. Let's move on to the question, were there giants in America? So I got to looking around. If when they very first came over, the 17th century, and some of these maps, 16th century maps, whatever, are showing California as an island. And certainly you can see the indentation there of the Sacramento Valley, the San Joaquin, and it's very low. So it's like a lush agricultural place now, because it's very low and the mountains around it give it a lot of water. And there are lots of rivers coming down from the Sierras and inlets coming from the sea. I mean, we can see San Francisco Bay, and there's the San Luis Cove there, whatever they call it, and there's many others, many rivers coming in from the coast and all the way up to Canada. All these rivers are coming down. And if you'll notice that right at the opening of this green area that we would call the Sacramento Valley, you've got several big dams. There's the Oroville Dam, stopping any of the water from coming off the Mount Lassen, Mount Shasta area. You go further north, the Sacramento keeps going till it gets to the Shasta Mount. There's several, Trinity Lake, Shasta Lake, and there's dams that block each and every river before it gets into this. They've got a canal now where they control the water. The Sacramento is a very large river anyway, but if these dams were not there, the Oroville Dam, the Folsom Dam, and look, all of these dams are stopping any water from the mountains to go in. They're filling up reservoirs high before it even gets to the valley, on the east side of the Sacramento, San Joaquin valleys. But on the west side, there's like where you see the San Luis, the Berryessa, Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta, and all these round spots are various different dams keeping any water from the ocean areas or the mountains along the oceans from going down into this deep valley. And it seems like they've made enough. Look up here at Clear Lake. There's a dam there. They're stopping all water, and they're controlling all the water. I think it seems logical to me that this whole thing might have been an island at one time. And obviously they wouldn't have had the technology to build the dams until perhaps, or the desire to do it. Maybe back in the day they didn't want there to be a dam. They didn't think of it whenever these individuals were there hundreds of years ago. But when these Coronado individuals came in and explored it and were looking for the 7 cities of gold or whatever they were doing, they found this area underwater. And perhaps they sent armies of men in there to build these dams right off the bat. Yeah, some of the dams were built later on, but I know like the Folsom Dam was finished in 1893. So that's, a while back. That then doesn't necessarily explain why in, I guess, 1893 there was no California island there. So I'm not sure this completely explains it, although in 1893 and up to 1930s, and some of these dams were being built 40s and 50s, 1930s, 40s, 50s. That's still a long time ago. But I doubt whether they could have fooled us, because I don't think the Folsom Dam by itself could have stopped all the water from filling in there. And, I know people that were born before that time. My mother was born in about that, 1929. And, she lived in California as a young person. I'm pretty sure California wasn't an island in the early 1900s. But the area in California wasn't too well known to history until after the gold rush, which was 1840. So the people that were over there during the gold rush didn't say that California was an island, but Sacramento River might have been bigger because there was no dams. And maybe at that time, if there were no dams, the water was coming in and there were lots of lakes and things that they just didn't talk about. So perhaps it wasn't one big island. They may have exaggerated the California Bay or whatever, or the Gulf that made that California an island, and it may have just been a large river. Maybe the Sacramento was even larger than it is today. And they could travel on boat up the Sacramento all the way out to make a passage, and then maybe this is where the idea of the Northwest Passage came from. I don't know, but I'm just showing you that maybe they did build all these dams to stop the water from flowing in as much as it does, or it did, in ancient times where they drew it as an island. Maybe it was just a big river. And perhaps in ancient times when water flowed freely, maybe the water went up and down and the lake was higher and lower at times. But I wonder if there was always a lake along the Sacramento. It's just a thought. But it certainly does. I mean, here's the keys to watershed: the Sacramento River, the San Joaquin River, and the Tulare Lake. Yeah, there's something, I don't know. It's just when you get synchronicities, when you find things that make sense, you have no idea if it's true. They've been telling us, they've never told us about this. But when you see this evidence that water is being blocked and controlled, and we know that maybe not as much today because they're trying to keep the world from having food and they're trying to destroy our agriculture. But I know, even when I was a kid and years before that, the Sacramento Valley and the San Joaquin Valley was the lushest valley in the world that basically fed the world for years. All the fruit, everything you can imagine that it was good to eat. Even the milk. They had milk cows in the area. It was a lot of milk. I know there's always been a lot of milk in Wisconsin and that up in that area, but this was the most majorest place in the United States for producing produce and foods and various things, because it was the lushest. It was like the Euphrates Valley or the Tigris where they settled, and or the Nile. This was the Sacramento. So maybe just like the Nile, at one time it was controlled by dams. If you look at the Great Pyramid, now they're saying it may have been a power plant. Well, maybe they had these ideas for centuries. They would come and they would go. And we were just talking about the Panama Canal. I mean, that's a big thing to keep the water open there so you can go across land. I mean, they can do all kinds of things. Look at in China, they're building huge dams and power plants and these kinds of things. Why? Because they want to concentrate all of the people in one area and give them this electricity, which is like a miracle, and all these comforts and engines and cars and things, technology, but based on a way to fence in and control the public and the masses. And they have control of the knowledge of how we're getting food and how food is given to us by making these lush valleys so they can make what? An unnatural substance called bread that they then put in bleach and put chemicals and kill us with so they can feed us and control the food chain. Anyway, these are some of the pictures of Shasta Dam. And behind it is just like a river it's not a big lake. It's like a big dam that holds back the river. And the river then rises through up the higher in the canyon, up the canyon walls, and makes what looks like a long, huge, windy river. By the way, look at where the water line goes up and down. Now, I lived there. I spent a lot of years in that area, around Orville and Folsom and Shasta and so forth. But you could see from one year to the next that the water would go way down, like hundreds of feet, and then one year it'd be real high. We got a lot of rain. So it does indeed, the water does indeed just fill up this canyon. Just fills up the canyon for hundreds of miles. The only reason it doesn't fill up the canyon downstream is you got a dam there. And there's many of these dams. So, yeah, it does go up and down. If that dam wasn't there, all that water would be going down, filling up the California Sacramento Basin. And, perhaps that's high enough because it's not that from sea level. All you need to do is make a dam a few hundred feet or 50 feet or whatever it might be to stop the water coming, level it out so it won't roll down and fill up the whole basin. But there's a lot of these dams like this, holding back all this water. And one of them could be the one over there in Boulder, Hoover Dam, and these others that we've heard about. But it's pretty amazing. But what really is amazing is that there are things going on here that even in the year 2025, we do not even hear about. You see that picture there? That is from the sky. You cannot really see these pictures, unless you're looking at it from the sky. These are huge designs and pictures on the ground. And in order to make the picture on the ground, you'd probably have to have an aerial view. Two curious things about them, other than that they can only be seen and viewed from the air, is that it looks like they're depicting giants, and the Native Americans would do their little petroglyphs, and they would have these weird giants as well. I'll show you a picture of that. This is just one of the pictures in the petroglyphs that you find in that area. In where I'm at and towards California, in this whole area, you'll find these petroglyphs with literally, they show giants. You see that there's a man and a deer to give you perspective, but the giants that they draw, you notice the little guy looks like a regular human. It's not done in some kind of oil, like Pascal or Van Gogh, but it's certainly, you could tell it's a human, a normal looking human. But the giants, they got these huge chests, little heads, weird long arms, and it almost looks like they're wearing a spacesuit, maybe. There's another kind of a giant waving or something. And that one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. But, well, wait a minute. The one hand looks like it's only got 4 fingers. That's odd. But they go to great detail trying to tell you whether there's actually 4 fingers or 5. They draw them out, even if the hand looks weird, just to let you know this is a human. He's got 5. But the giants and the alien creatures that they draw on the petroglyphs, some of them have 6 fingers. There's not on this drawing, but on some of them. But yeah, strange petroglyphs. They know what a deer looks like. They know what a human looks like. But then more than twice the height of the human is these giants with some weird extraterrestrial look. I think that it's not because they were seeing aliens, but I think there were people on this earth for thousands of years that had great technologies, and maybe they could fly and they had ships. The designs that our government have to make these UFO type things, and they're trying to tell us that it's UFOs. I don't think so. I think this is a technology that mankind has had for a long time, and when they go through the reset, they make you believe that they just invented it all. You've probably seen similar things in Peru. They were called the lines of Nazca down in Peru. And it's very much like this. Pictures of animals that you can only see from the sky. And we're going to show that these pictures are from ancient antiquity. And the people who built them were giants. And why did they make these curious pictures? Why are there petroglyphs curiously all over the canyons? Why is everything such a mystery? Who were the giants? Were there giants in America? Well, sure, there might have been some abnormal giants just came up throughout history accidentally. Even today we have people that end up 7 feet tall or whatever. But these were people that may have been as high as maybe 12 feet tall. A lot of them were 9 or 10 feet tall, maybe. We're not quite sure, although we've dug up skeletons that are over 9, 10, 11 feet tall. One was 12 feet. And we're going to read those accounts to you here today. And they have to do with whoever made these lines. And these are not in Peru. These are lines here in somewhere around Southern California and Arizona, where these individuals were reported by native peoples who were not giants. The native peoples in their history report that there were giants that used to come and they'd have wars with and stuff. But they weren't the native peoples, and that they had been here for ancient times. Maybe the Anasazi. But which means the ancient ones. But sometimes they say they lived underground. Well, anyway, we're going to take a look at this book called Ancient America's Lost Giants. A friend of mine sent a video about this to me, and I tried to find information on it and couldn't do it. You got to buy the book. So, disclaimer, this is for teaching purposes, for instructions, and to commentate on these facts that this man wrote in his book. So, fair use, YouTube. I know you want to sell these books, and you can be my guest and go and find this book and buy it. And I'm only going to read some of the chapters in this book that describe these giants, and then we're going to talk about it. But this will blow your mind, because I don't think many people realize what was going on here in America before the white man got here. So let me read a little bit of this in chapter 3. It says, it was a journey full of conquest, wonder, adventure, danger, and heartbreak. It was a journey inspired by tales of lost cities of gold. Cities once ruled by a race of giants in times immemorable, and tales that inspired more than 300 conquistadors, 1,100 American Indian allies, and more than 1,000 animals to embark on an epic journey across hot, arid deserts and rugged mountains. The tales inspired the man who led them, a 30-year-old Spanish playboy by the name of Francisco Vasquez de Coronado, a man from a noble family. Noble, I've told you guys a lot about how people who came over from Spain and France were of some noble bloodline. But we've got to be careful, because there were the infiltrators that were also from a noble bloodline that Charlemagne brought over from Baghdad or Babylon, that were from the line of Jeconiah. But, of course, Mary Magdalene and Jesus and their ancestors lived in Languedoc and were driven out of there into Spain, and then ended up over here in America. At different times, there were different expulsions and inquisitions. But, yes, noble blood. Now, this man from a noble family, Coronado, was born in Salamanca, Spain in 1510, and attended the famous university there before ditching his studies to join his conquistador buddies in Mexico. While in Mexico, Coronado married a wealthy woman who was able to secure him a high-ranking position in the Spanish army. 1538, Coronado was named governor of New Galicia, a Spanish province in Mexico, and he soon began hatching a plan to get rich and famous. First, Coronado financed a mini expedition to El Dorado, which is another name in the Spanish tongue for the Cibola, the 7 cities of gold, by sending the knowledgeable monk Marcos de Niza on a northern journey of exploration. Marcos had been with Pizarro during his conquest of the Incas in Peru, where he learned about the fabled golden-walled 7 cities of Cibola, more commonly known as El Dorado. After finding gold in Peru, but failing to locate El Dorado, de Niza learned that the legendary source of Inca gold was in a land much further north from South America, figuring that it was somewhere in Mexico. The monk followed the trail to the Spanish-ruled Mexican province of New Galicia, where he acquired the final bits of information regarding the location of the city. After dazzling Coronado with his tale, de Niza was sent out to find the city with some Indian guides, and the black freeman Estevanco, one of the survivors of the ill-fated Narvaez expedition. Estevanco had traveled and lived with American Indians of the North for many years, this black man, a Moor from Morocco. He spoke a variety of languages and claimed to know exactly where the legendary lost city was located. With Coronado's blessing, Niza and his team of treasure hunters began their quest for El Dorado, heading north into modern-day Arizona. So they're coming up through the Gulf, and they're going to come at the end of the Gulf to Arizona. They're going to cross over Arizona into New Mexico. A landscape both strange and picturesque, with fertile valleys, abundant streams, snow-capped mountains, hanging above oddly cut narrow canyons with 100-foot high rock walls. That sounds like Candy Kitchen here where I'm at, that I take you guys to, and we look at these canyons and rocks, and they're all over throughout here and in Arizona as well. The further they went, the closer they were to Cibola, which is the county in New Mexico that I live in, a rich mountain kingdom with 7 great cities of gold. Estevanco, already the first African to enter Texas, was now the first to enter Arizona as well. However, he disappeared shortly after entering the Superstition Mountains, and Niza never set eyes on him again. Where's the Superstition Mountains? Well, those are near Phoenix, Arizona, like 40 miles from Phoenix, Arizona. And there is, even today, a lot of mystery that goes on in them there mountains. But that's where we're talking about, the area. So it says they assumed that he had been killed by the Zuni, and Niza was then warned by his scouts about the natives who were killing anybody who got close to Cibola, and that Estevanco had made it there only to be imprisoned and murdered. Niza made it just close enough to get a glimpse of what he thought was the legendary lost city before returning back to Mexico to inform Coronado of his disappointing northern mission. The glimpse was all Coronado needed to convince him, that's all he needed, to organize an expedition and seize the glory. During the spring of 1540, a large company of men, including Niza, joined their leader, Francisco de Coronado, on a journey north in search of the legendary El Dorado. They marched right into northern Arizona and passed through the Superstition Mountains, through the area around Phoenix, which isn't like about 300 miles from me, on their way to Cibola, where I'm at, in Cibola County, New Mexico. The problem was that they were looking for a city of gold on the outside of the mountains instead of within the mountains. So what I was telling you the other day, guys, is that these were actually caves. They're underground. That's why they never found them, and they're most likely still here underground somewhere. While Coronado's expedition was underway, fellow conquistador Hernando de Alarcon followed with 2 ships full of goods along the Gulf of California. But he ended up so far ahead of them that he eventually got tired of waiting and decided to keep sailing north. Really? How would you sail beyond where California starts? There, unless it was water. He entered the lower Colorado River. He's sailing. And he's going up the Colorado now, upon which Alarcon and his men came upon the first settlement of the giant Cocopa warriors. I'm sure this is why the original maps in those days had California as an island, and the water went right up into the Gulf, or into the San Joaquin and Sacramento Valley. But he made peace with these giant American Indians, giants, as his ships continued upstream. This is their account of what they did. I don't think they made this up. Where they were greeted by thousands more. At the same time, Don Rodrigo Maladando returned from the coast where he had been searching for Alarcon's ships with an American Indian so tall that it impressed Coronado and his fellow Spaniards immensely. Pedro de Castaneda, who accompanied Coronado and later penned the most accurate first-hand account of the expedition, he writes, Don Rodrigo Maldonado, who was captain of these who went in search of the ships, did not find them, but he brought back with him an Indian so large and tall. This is from Pedro de Castaneda. He says they were so tall that the best man in the army reached only to his chest. It was said that other Indians were even taller on the coast. According to historians, the great American Indian was of the Seri, a great giant that occupied the island of Tiburon and the adjacent Sonora coast of the Gulf of California. In the meantime, Coronado was marching into New Mexico while Captain Melchor Diaz, who was still trying to establish contact with Alarcon, when he came across more tribes of giant American Indians, Castaneda reports. They came to a province of exceedingly tall and strong men like giants. They are naked and live in large straw cabins built underground like smoke houses, with only the straw roof above ground. They enter these at one end and come out the other. More than 100 persons, old and young, sleep in one cabin. When they carry anything, they can take a load of more than 300 or 400 weight on their heads. Once, when our men wished to fetch a log for the fire, and 6 men were unable to carry it, one of these Indians is reported to have come and raised it in his arms, put it on his head alone, and carried it very easily. And then it shows you this picture. Of course, California is an island. This is in 1650, and we see their reports. All these maps in those days had California as an island. And we are reading the report where they literally sailed up there, which would be impossible with the way things are there today. So I think there probably was a great waterway, even if it was just a widened Sacramento River. But you can definitely see in all these maps, and on the maps you see Cibola and all these names that we're talking about. So it's like somebody had mapped this all out. You see that little lake right there? There it gives you all the names. You've got the Apache, the Navajo, and then there's this lake. And that river that goes to the lake is the Gia River, which is the river that goes all the way up to New Mexico, where I'm at, to the Cibola area. And today we don't really have a lake there. So if we could find out where that lake was, but it mentions the Zuni and all these 7 cities, and it mentions Marata. If you see down there at the bottom where the lake goes to the right, you see Marata. I believe that is probably their way of spelling Martha. And you see Mary in there and all the different names that we've gone over in prior videos, where they literally have made this map. All these maps you see were their efforts to find the 7 cities of gold. That's why you have all these maps. They're trying to find America. And a lot of people don't realize that they came across these giants. And that's what we're going to show you today. So then it says that by the time Coronado got to Cibola, he was attacked by a barrage of arrows and forced to retreat with the arrow heads stuck in his armor. Eventually, Coronado and the men stormed the walls of the village and laid waste to the American Indians living there. After a grueling march, Coronado and his battered warriors finally entered Cibola and soon feasted. on much-needed meals of corn, beans, and turkey. However, while their bellies were full, that's interesting, they probably could catch some of the baby turkeys and grouse and things that are around in the canyons and raise them for their eggs and stuff. Why not? There are naturally turkeys running around here as well. But it says, however, while their bellies were full, their coffers remained empty. After a lengthy search of the village, not a speck of gold or silver was found, and certainly not the fabled El Dorado. So Coronado sent expeditions out in different directions while he marched all the way into modern-day Kansas. But each brigade came up empty-handed. By the time Coronado returned to Mexico, more than 80% of the platoon had abandoned him. He returned with less than 100 men, all starving, skinny, and ragged, with no gold to show, and no lost city to brag about. His expedition was a disaster. Coronado was branded a failure and removed from his high-ranking position within the Spanish government. Soon afterward, he died penniless, was almost forgotten about until about 40 years later, when Castanada's book detailing Coronado's expedition was published. In time, Coronado's quest for El Dorado became one of America's great early adventure stories, and the Spanish explorers were celebrated for their early achievements in chronicling the strange new history of the Americas. As for the giant Indians they encountered, they, like the rest of their kin, would soon be eradicated and left as a controversial footnote in the history books. The conquistador quest through Arizona put them in lands that were mystical, dangerous, and ancient, as the Wild West pioneers found. Out of a few hundred years later, when they began discovering giants buried deep in the desert near an area where Coronado and his men marched, railroad workers near Sycamore Creek, Arizona, discovered a prehistoric graveyard of giants, as reported by the New Centennial on April the 19th, 1926. A prehistoric graveyard on Sycamore Creek, where the grade of the Verde Railway passes through, has been uncovered by a crew of laborers under the direction of conductor C.W. Corbin. In performing certain excavations to improve the roadway, there has thus been revealed a very interesting situation that prevailed at some time or another in the physical makeup of a race, is reflected in the massive remains that have been recovered, and which are indisputable of a giant type of humanity that is bewildering to those of this generation. The skull of a human is in the possession of Mr. Corbin, together with a portion of the frame that would indicate one who in life must have attained a height of at least 8 feet. The bones of the legs, likewise, are of greater length and heavier than today. In 1911, the weekly journal Miner reported on a giant discovery a few ranchers made when attempting to dig a well in Prescott, Arizona. The ranch owner, Peter Marks, contacted a local attorney, started to make full-scale preparations for a massive excavation before giving the local press a little bit of history about the discovery. The bones of this monstrous human may have represented a race of men or a single individual. At any rate, the skeleton of the man in my possession is sufficiently complete so that the dimensions, which are astounding, may be accurately ascertained insofar as the present generation is to be considered. From what I can learn, there is no comparison to be formed In the first place, the skull is of such an abnormal size that if the average man of this day placed it over his head, he still would find room to move it backwards and forwards and up and down with ease, without disturbing his natural position. From measurements taken of this skull, a number 10 hat would be required to fit it. The teeth, several of which are still embedded in the jawbone, substantiate the immense size of the head. As to the bones, there is no disputing the fact that the owner was symmetrically formed of immense size and Herculean strength. The thigh and lower limbs indicate at least twice the size of the average man of today. Peter Marks also discovered mounds and stone ruins on his ranch near Walnut Creek. He was soon visited by an attaché of the Smithsonian Institution who took pictures of the giant and even offered to buy the mysterious skeleton. But Marks refused to sell. A few months later, he mysteriously died in a car accident, and no further information emerged as to what happened to the giant skeleton. His land was sold to an unnamed private buyer who quickly barred the public from getting close to the property in Arizona. Near the Conquistador traversed hills of the Superstition Mountains, a giant skeleton was discovered along the spot of the Gia River. Now, that's the river that comes up here to the Gia cliff-dwelling Zunis and all the Hopis and the Apaches and the Navajos that live in this area, where I live in the Cibola County, New Mexico. That's the Gia River that goes from the Gulf of California all the way up here to New Mexico. The April 19th, 1915 edition of the El Paso Herald reports, the skeleton of a giant, fully 8 feet tall, has been found near Silver City. I live fairly close to Silver City. There are no cities around me. Gallup's to the north and Silver City is to the south of me, said H.E. Davis. The thigh bone of this ancient inhabitant of the Southwest measures 2 inches more than the ordinary man and must have been a giant of great strength. The jawbone is large enough to fit over the jaw of an ordinary man. A peculiarity of the forehead is that it recedes from the eyes like that of an ape. The similarity is still further found in the sharp bones under the eyes. The skeleton was found encased in baked mud, indicating that encasing the corpse in mud and baking it was the mode of embalming. Near the skeleton was found a stone weighing 12 pounds, which, judging from the shape, must have been a club. The wooden handle has rotted away, but there was marks on the stone that indicates that it had been bound to a wooden handle with tongs. It is rather peculiar that less than 30 miles from where this skeleton was found and located on the Gia River are the former houses of a tribe of small cliff dwellers, the Gia cliff dwellers. The existence of these 2 races so near together forms an interesting topic. So here we have the Gia cliff dwellers, which are normal-sized humans, and then not far from there is these great giants. Anyway, we're over an hour, but, this throws a lot of more kinks into the hose here, because now we've got giants, we've got the 7 cities of gold and what they could have been, and why were people coming from the 7 cities of gold that were in the Languedoc where Mary Magdalene was, and why did they name everything after Mary and Martha and Jesus and the apostles, as we've seen in the videos we've been doing in this area? Why did they have all these maps trying to find these 7 cities? And why is it also that in this area we have these mysterious pictures that you can only see from way up above, as if they had some sort of aerial view able to see things from great heights, or they knew that somebody one day would be able to see it from great heights? Or was there a space landing here? If you're into the Galactic Federation, which I'm not, and I don't believe in aliens, but you did believe in aliens, you might think, and this is the whole premise of Von Daniken's book, and he talked about the lines at Nazca at Peru and said that they had to have been put there for space travelers because you don't see them on the ground. They're pictures, they're art, but not from people on the ground. You've got to view this art from above. And perhaps they were guiding spacecraft into the world to land in these areas. Now, there's certainly something there that sounds interesting and may lend to something of that nature, but there could be other explanations. One that seems to be going on in my head is why all the petroglyphs, and they may have had a use at the time that they made them, but they seem to be a mystery now, just like the Great Pyramid. It's almost as if they were built to be a great mystery so that we could sit here and do these videos and puzzle over it. So we're going to try and crack the mystery, friends. We got to know what's going on and why there were buried treasures there then and there. And everybody's searching for it, but we've never found it. Maybe our government has. Remember, all these things were all put in newspaper articles and then disappeared. Taken to the Smithsonian Institute and then disappeared. It's just weird that they're hiding these things. But almost, like some kind of conspiracy, they announce it. They have documented these things with newspaper articles every time they find something. But then as soon as they go out and look at it, like, well, it's all missing. It's gone. Nobody knows what's going on or where it went. Like the Kincaid cave in the Grand Canyon that was in the Phoenix I think it was the Phoenix Gazette or something. All of these finds, these giants, are very mysterious, indicate crazy things that maybe we're supposed to figure out. It's like even the Bible is written in some kind of parables and it's all coded, and it's like everything's designed for humans to see if we can get out of this maze. Can we make it out? Can we figure out where we're at? It's almost like that Star Trek series where Captain Kirk was sent down to some planet and he was sent down there with this other, looked like a dinosaur or some kind of crazy, dragon thing. And so it was man's mind against brute strength. But the dinosaur was kind of intelligent too, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, in this series that was on Star Trek, Kurt found like gunpowder and some kind of a tube to make a missile or something. And he put some coal and he found all these things and he made a missile or a gun. And he won because he had smarts. But the brute ended up losing, but there was these aliens that were watching to see if they could figure it out. As if these big-headed gray aliens were going to find out who was the smartest and reward Kirk's race over the other race because they liked mind over brute strength or something. So at least our modern script writers running with the propaganda that we have today have been doing this propaganda for a while with our movies and our series on television to try and get us to believe that there are aliens watching us. That's what the whole Star Trek thing was about, and Star Wars and stuff, that there's this galactic federation. They want us to believe this. But anyway, if you read this book that you can find on the internet, but you got to pay for it and stuff, I got this off of somebody else's thing, kind of snuck it, I didn't pay for it. But this book got tons of information about these giants that they found everywhere, all over California and Arizona, and even up in Idaho and Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona, and all this area, and even clear over in Wisconsin, and in the mountains all throughout the Midwest and stuff, and the East area and the Appalachians. All of this seems to have incontrovertible evidence that there were giants. And there is evidence that these giants were thousands of years before, maybe before the flood, which may indicate that this was indeed the land of Atlantis before Noah's flood. I'm going to leave it there. Hope you have a wonderful evening. We'll see you guys tomorrow. It's actually snowing as we speak, but it's almost like hail. It's soft hail, like little round pieces of snow, and it just melts when it hits the ground. Been snowing the last 2-3 days, but nothing sticking. Hope you have a wonderful evening. May the Lord bless you. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.